Skinner, and today we're going in search of one of the Old West's most notorious outlaws, William H. Bunny, known as Billy the Kid to you and I. A lot of people know that Billy the Kid is supposed to have killed 21 people by his 21st birthday. But did you know that Billy the Kid had a brother? An older brother that was about 4 years older than Billy, and he called him Josie. So let's go and see if we can find out all we can about Billy the Kid. This is a picture of Billy the Kid. It's believed to have been taken at Fort Sumner, New Mexico, between 1878 and 1880. Now, people that knew Billy said that he was a good-looking boy, and that this picture didn't do him justice. We know that Billy's mother was Catherine or Kathleen McCarty, but we don't know if it was her married name or her maiden name. It's been reported that she was nice-looking, very pretty, and had a wonderful sense of humor, and that she passed it on to her boys. Little or nothing, unfortunately, is known about their dad. We can't say for sure, but some people believe that this is a picture of Billy. He's the one that's standing, and his brother Joseph is sitting. Kathleen called Joseph Josie, and she called Billy Henry. We know that Kathleen married William Antrim in Santa Fe, New Mexico, sometime around 1873, with her 2 boys present. Now this is William Antrim in later years. We also know that after they married, the Anthrims moved to Silver City, New Mexico. Now this is an early picture of Silver City and what it looked like. And this is a replica of the first house that the Anthrims moved into when they got to Silver City. They said that it was put back in the very same spot. And now you're looking at the modern day Silver City. A few years earlier, Kathleen had contracted tuberculosis. It was stated by neighbors that even with her handicap, she sent her boys to school, she took good care of them, and she kept them clean. However, on the 16th of September, 1874, Kathleen Antrim passed away. She was buried in the Memorial Lane Cemetery in Silver City. Now this is her original tombstone. It's now located in the Lincoln County Museum in Lincoln. Kathleen was 45 years old. After Billy's mother passed away, the boys were sent to different foster homes because their stepdad didn't want to be saddled with 2 young boys. By the age of 15, Billy left his foster home and wandered in and out of trouble for a couple of years. He finally ends up in Lincoln, New Mexico. In the lower left corner of the picture is the courthouse and jail that Billy will later escape from. When Billy arrived in Lincoln in 1877, it belonged to the Murphy-Dolan faction. The city and county will later be divided into 2 different factions, with the Murphy-Dolan gang being the strongest. They had control of the county and was considered being completely corrupt. They were supported by powerful investors from the territorial capital in Santa Fe. The Murphy-Dolan faction controlled the county sheriff's office, letting them get away with just about anything. They owned the town's general store and also owned a huge cattle ranch. This is the same territory you're looking at that Billy the Kid rode through on horseback several times. Not much has really changed, except the road is now paved and runs straight through the town of Lincoln. If you notice this sign, it says that Lincoln County was formed in 1869, and it happens to be the largest county, land-wise, in the country. Now this is Main Street of Lincoln. We're looking west. On the right side of the street was saloons and small stores. The big building across the street was the Murphy-Dolan headquarters, and downstairs was store and sometimes saloon. Upstairs was the Murphy Dolan offices. Now later the building will become the county courthouse downstairs, and upstairs will become the county jail. That's after Dolan sells the building to the county. In this old photo you see stairs from the outside going up to the second floor. When Billy the Kid escaped from the second floor jail, there was no stairs at that time, but the outside balcony was there. Now this is the way it looks today. Not a lot has changed, except there's now a paved road instead of a dirt one. This is a picture of Murphy Dolan faction, with Dolan standing up. He, at that time, was second in command. On the right side of the picture is Lawrence Murphy, head of the organization. He started it, and then he took in Dolan as a partner. However, Murphy was diagnosed with cancer sometime before the Lincoln County War started. He began drinking heavy and later went to Santa Fe for treatment. He soon lost control to his young protege, James Dolan. This is a picture of James Dolan, the only leader to live through the Lincoln County War. Billy worked for Dolan when he first arrived in Lincoln County, and Dolan was having his men, including Billy, rustling cattle from ranchers and selling them to Mexicans across the border. He even sold them to soldiers in the U.S. Army, which he had a contract with, that he had gotten through powerful friends in Santa Fe. While working for Dolan, Billy was a witness to seeing Dolan killing a Lincoln County attorney, and that he'll testify to later on. Back at the Murphy Dolan headquarters, everyone referred to the organization as the House. We're now looking east on Main Street. The U.S. President Hayes once stated that during the Lincoln County War, this was the most dangerous street in America. Around 19 men were killed on this street. This is John Tunstall, a wealthy Englishman looking to start a new business adventure backed by his wealthy family in London. John purchased a ranch in Lincoln County and soon realized in order to compete with the now James Dolan faction, he'd have to open his own store. He enlisted the help of attorney Alexander McSween and cattleman John Chisholm. Tunstall was said to be an easy-going, peace-loving man, and he was in his early 20s when he died. Tunstall managed to persuade Billy, Charlie Baldry, and George Cole to leave Dolan and go to work for him. This is a picture of Tunstall's family estate in London. This is Alexander McSween, who was a lawyer and became a partner with Tunstall. They started the Tunstall-McSween merchandise store in competition with the Dolan faction. Now this is John Chisholm, who backed Tunstall and McSween against the Dolan House organization. Chisholm was considered to be one of the largest ranchers in the West at that time. We're looking west down Main Street, towards the Dolan building that was now the courthouse and jail. Now this is the Tunstall-McSween store that they built in competition with Dolan. And this is the store today. And this is the store during the time that Tunstall and McSween owned it. McSween had built a large house out of an old adobe house that was there to start with. It was located in this empty lot next to their store. Up until that time, competition between the two factions had been mostly peaceable. Now this is sort of what it looked like inside Tunstall's and McSween's store. However, things turned bloody on the 18th of February, 1878. Sheriff Brady's deputies, all appointed by the Dolan faction, caught John Tunstall without his men and out in the open range. The deputies killed John Tunstall and even killed the horse that he was riding. They knew that he loved that horse and was trying to make a point. All 4 deputies said that for no reason Tunstall drew his gun on them, and they had no recourse but to kill him. At the bottom of the hill is where Tunstall was killed. Every person knew it was cold-blooded murder. Everyone knew that John Tunstall would do everything he could to avoid trouble. His body was brought back to Lincoln and buried right behind his store. After Tunstall's death, his partner, Alexander McSween, tried to get justice by trying to convince Judge John Wilson to sign a warrant for the deputy's arrest. He was reluctant to sign because the killers were all lawmen. Judge Wilson finally signed the warrant and then appointed Tunstall foreman Dick Brewer as special constable. Then Dick Brewer deputized the rest of the Tunstall ranch hands, including Billy. They call themselves the Regulators. This is believed to be a picture of some of the Regulators, and some believe that it is Billy sitting on the ground. This is one of the Regulators, Bob Sherlock, and this is Billy's closest friend, Tom O'Flaherty, and this is Charlie Bowdry. Both O'Flaherty and Bowdry are buried next to Billy. This is Eugenia Cesar in his later years. And this is Frank Cole, and this is Frank's brother, George Cole. Both brothers lived through the Lincoln County War. The Regulators' first job was to head to the Dolan Ranch and arrest Billy Morgan and Frank Baker, whom they believed had been involved in the killing of Tunstall. After the arrest of Billy Morgan and Frank Baker, the Regulators stopped at Chisholm's ranch. Now this is John Chisholm, and this is his cowboys at his ranch. Chisholm made the Regulators promise that they would deliver the prisoners back to Lincoln safe. This is the entrance to the Chisholm Ranch today. This is the territorial Governor Alex, who appointed this man, Sheriff William J. Brady, as the new Lincoln County Sheriff. Brady was part of the Dolan gang and actually worked for Dolan. Although the Regulators had promised John Chisholm to see that the prisoners would return to Lincoln safe, they later claimed that Morgan and Baker tried to escape on their way back and that they couldn't do anything but kill them. Also, they killed a Regulator that they thought was spying for Dolan. Governor Axel declared with a stroke of a pen that the Regulators were no longer lawmen, but were outlaws. After appointing Brady sheriff on April 1, 1878, Sheriff Brady and 4 deputies, Billy Mathis, George Pippin, who will later be appointed sheriff, George Hyman, and Jack Long, left the Dolan headquarters and walked east toward the Tunstall store down the middle of the street. They had a warrant to arrest Alexander McSween, supposedly for his support of the Regulators. McSween they believed to be visiting the Ellises at a house just east of his store. When they reached the east side of the store, the Regulators were hiding behind an adobe wall and opened fire, killing Sheriff Brady, and they also killed Deputy Hyman, and the rest of the deputies scattered. They said Billy run out in the street to get the sheriff's rifle. Billy was seen and was the only one that was identified as helping kill Sheriff Brady, although it was doubtful that Billy alone put 9 bullets in the sheriff. This act launched the legend of Billy the Kid, who played a minor role and a minor part up to then. Although the Regulators was considered to be outlaws by the governor, they continued making arrests of anyone that they thought had anything to do with Tunstall's murder. They told the newspapers that the Regulators didn't kill Sheriff Brady to protect McSween, but to arrest the killers that had killed John Tunstall. This is the grave of Sheriff Brady, buried on his own ranch. The sheriff was 48 years old. On the 4th of April, 1978, the Regulators tried to arrest a man called Buckshot Roberts. They found Roberts in this building, in Blazer's Mill, about 40 miles south of Lincoln. They thought that Roberts had took part in Tunstall's murder, although there's now doubt that he had any involvement at all. Before they was able to kill Roberts, he had managed to kill the head of the Regulators, Dick Brewer. Now this is a picture of George Cole, years later, showing his finger that Roberts had shot off during their attempt to arrest him. The Regulators was without a leader when Dick Brewer was killed. They did manage, however, finally to kill Roberts, and the town folks carried Roberts up the hill a short distance from where he had died and buried him. He had been a Confederate soldier, so later on they erected a Confederate tombstone. They also took Dick Brewer up the hill and buried him next to Buckshot Roberts, the man that had killed him. In July of 1878, Alexander McSween gathered up a small army of farmers and ranch hands and rode into Lincoln. He fortified his home next to the Tunstall McSween store, and his men took up positions throughout the town. These buildings up and down this street was heavily fortified with McSween men, including the Regulators. The new sheriff, George Pippin, who had been appointed to replace Sheriff Brady, was also a Dolan man. Sheriff Pippin enlisted some of the most notorious outlaws in New Mexico, along with the federal troops from Fort Stanton close by. After 5 days of shooting up and down this street, left several people dead on both sides. Now the red X is McSween's home next to his McSween Townsend store, and it's showing where McSween and some of the Regulators were fortified. McSween's house was across the street, where the empty lot is now located. The Dolan faction, with help from the army, had finally managed to surround McSween and some of his men into his own house, then come up with the idea of burning them out. As Billy and a few others managed to escape through the hail of bullets, McSween and others were killed. Although the army did have a Gatling gun, they never used it. After the house burned, it was left an empty lot. McSween's body was taken behind his and Tunstall's store and buried next to his friend, John Tunstall. This is Eugenius Cesar. He was one of the Regulators and a close friend of Billy the Kid's. He was left for dead at the McSween home shootout, but he recovered. Ironically, after the standoff at the McSween home, the Lincoln County War was basically over with, because McSween and Tunstall were both dead, and Lawrence Murphy was in Santa Fe dying of cancer. James Dolan was the only leader left. Later, after Billy's death, James Dolan had this house built in 1888, directly across the street from the Tunstall McSween store. In later years, Dolan bought the Tunstall store and also the Tunstall Ranch. James Dolan will end up serving as Lincoln County Treasurer and then as a senator in the territorial government until his death. This is another look at James Dolan. They say that crime doesn't pay unless your name is James Dolan. Before Dolan's death, he had already sold the headquarters building to the county, and by this time, Lew Wallace had been appointed territorial governor by the President of the United States, who wanted Governor Wallace to clean up Lincoln County from its lawlessness once and for all. However, by this time, there wasn't much left to clean up, except to prosecute a few of the Regulators that were still on the run for murder. The governor was so determined to restore law and order, he offered a pardon to anyone who participated in the Lincoln County War, except those that had murder warrants against them, like Billy the Kid, for killing Sheriff Brady. Now, this is a picture of Governor Lew Wallace. However, Governor Wallace did agree to meet with Billy at Judge Wilson's home in Lincoln, if Billy would agree to testify against James Dolan for killing a local attorney when Billy was working for Dolan. The agreement for Billy's testimony against Dolan, Billy would only have to serve a few days in jail and then be pardoned by the governor. Billy kept his part of the bargain. He testified against Dolan, and they actually got an indictment against him. But the district attorney, who was a Dolan man, refused to prosecute. They helped Billy for a while, but not hearing from the governor, Billy decided that the governor was not going to honor his bargain. So while he was being loosely guarded, he walked off and escaped. Now, this is the newly appointed sheriff, Pat Garrett. Pat became sheriff on the promise that he would clean up Lincoln County. Now, this is one of Billy's closest friends, Charlie Bowdry, and his wife, Manella. Charles had moved his family to Fort Sumner and sent word back to Pat Garrett that he wanted to go straight. However, on the 18th of December, Garrett and his posse surrounded Bowdry's home in Fort Sumner. Charlie had moved into what was an Indian hospital when it was an old army fort. Now, Fort Sumner had been purchased by Lucian Maxwell, one of the largest landowners in the country, when the government closed the fort. Lucian had turned the old fort into a small town. He was one of the wealthiest men in the West. Sheriff Garrett had learned that Bowdry had been harboring Billy and some of the regulators in his house. They surrounded the place, and they almost caught Billy in the shootout, and they did kill Tom O'Farrier. Now, this is the house of Lucian Maxwell, and later his son Pete Maxwell. This building was once the officers' quarters, and Maxwell had turned it into a 20-room mansion. It's also the building where Billy the Kid will later be killed. Now, this is one of the buildings at Fort Sumner. You can see the soldiers. These buildings will be turned into shops and houses when Maxwell buys it. This is Tom O'Farrier. When Sheriff Garrett's posse killed Tom, they took his body a few hundred yards to the old military cemetery to be buried. Billy and Charlie got away and headed south about 40 miles from Fort Sumner to a place called Stinking Springs. On December the 23rd, a few days after the raid on Bowdry's home, the posse caught up with Billy. They were in this little adobe hut at Stinking Springs. Now notice that there's no windows and only one door. Charlie Bowdry was shot and killed when he stepped out to check on the horses. It's possible that they thought he was Billy the Kid. Charlie's body was taken back to Fort Sumner and buried close to his pal, Tom O'Farrier. Billy soon gave up, and it's believed that this is the posse that captured him at Stinking Springs. On the left is believed to be Pat Garrett. Next to him is believed to be Deputy Bob Olinger, that Billy will kill while later on trying to escape jail. It's believed that Billy is the one on the right, and notice the deputy holding a gun to Billy's head. The posse took Billy back to Fort Sumner, where some folks said that they saw Pauletta Maxwell kissing Billy before they took him down to Messiah for trial for killing Sheriff Brady. In April of 1881, Billy was found guilty in this building, the courthouse at that time, and this building will later be turned into a museum. On the 28th of April, 1881, Billy had been taken back to Lincoln County to hang. Sheriff Garrett was out of town collecting taxes. He left 2 deputies in charge of looking after the prisoners and Billy. This is outside the old courthouse Murphy Dolan Museum in Lincoln. Downstairs, when Billy the Kid was held here, was the courtroom on the right as you go through the front door. And on the left, this little room was the post office. Straight ahead was the original safe. Now it can be seen in this old photograph. We're now at the back of the courthouse building. where on April the 28th, 1881, Deputy J.W. Bell, who had been guarding Billy, brought him out here to the outhouse so he could use the bathroom. Deputy Bob Olinger had taken the rest of the prisoners across the street to the Whirly House and restaurant to feed them as was customary. Now the toilet was located somewhere in this area, and prisoners had to be taken out several times a day. Billy was escorted out the back corner door. The white plaque is where Deputy Bell will fall and die after Billy shoots him. Now this is the inside corner door where Deputy Bell will bring Billy back through after he has used the outhouse. After Bell is shot, he will stumble back down the stairs through this door. The jail is located on the second floor, upstairs, so Bell had to follow behind Billy. Now, some people believe that a gun was left in the outhouse for Billy to find by his friends. But this is Billy's story of what happened next. He said he managed to slip one of his hands out of his shackles, and when they reached the top of the stairs, he swung the shackle and hit Deputy Bell across the forehead. As Bell staggered back, Billy jumped on him and grabbed his gun. Billy said he told Bell to hold his hands up, but instead of that, he turned and started running down the stairs. Billy said, "I had to shoot him." He said he regretted that because he liked Bell and really didn't want to do it. Billy said he then turned and ran into this room where the gun room was, or the arsenal, where the sheriff kept all of his weapons. One of the weapons kept in this room was a double-barreled shotgun that belonged to Deputy Bob Olinger. Billy gets Olinger's shotgun and loads both barrels. After Bell was shot, he continued to stagger down the stairs and out the door. He then started around the building, but fell when he got under this window. He died where the white stone marker's located. Billy said it really bothered him that he had to kill Bell because Bell was good to him, but he didn't mind killing Bob Olinger at all. Billy knew that Deputy Olinger probably heard the shot over at the Whirly House and would be on his way. Billy took Olinger's shotgun and scrambled through this door. Now remember, Billy still had his leg irons on. And at that time, this was not an open room like it is now. The rooms were mostly partitioned off, and this part was the sheriff's office, but there was no one there at the time. He was trying to get to the corner window where he could see Deputy Olinger coming from the Whirly Hotel. Billy had been kept in this corner room with his shackles bolted to the floor, and all the other prisoners were kept across the hall in another room. When he got here, he had to open the window. They have the actual leg irons worn by Billy and a poster explaining what happened here with a picture of U.S. Deputy Marshal Bob Olinger. This is the double-barrel 10-gauge shotgun that was Bob's and is the one that Billy used to kill the deputy with. This is a picture of James Dolan and Bob Olinger standing by his side. Bob Olinger was actually one of Dolan's men. Now this is the way the Lincoln County streets looked back then. When Billy fired the shot, not only Olinger heard the shot, but so did the townsfolks. People began gathering across the street from the jail and courthouse, wondering what was going on. This is across the street, and we're now looking at the Whirly Hotel, where Deputy Olinger was feeding the prisoners, and come running out when he heard the shot. We're now on the porch of the hotel, looking towards the jail across the street. Bob comes running out of the hotel and crosses what was then a dirt street. He was headed through the bottom door, not knowing that Billy was waiting at the upper window. We're now inside the window and seeing what Billy could see. The trees weren't there at the time. Now, it's been said that the groundskeeper had spotted the body of Deputy Bell and came running around the corner calling to Deputy Ollinger that Billy had killed Bell. When Deputy Ollinger got to this point, he knew Billy had killed Bell, but he didn't know that Billy was waiting in the window. Billy looked down at Bob Ollinger and said, "Hello, Bob," and pulled both triggers. Bob fell dead where the white stone plaque is located. Now this is the way it looked then, without the trees. Now Billy has to get out of his leg arms, although it was said that he was in no hurry. After killing Ollinger, Billy walks down what was this hallway to the door. Billy said he quickly went into the arsenal room and got some guns, and then he went out this door to the balcony. He comes out on the balcony and hollers to the people standing across the street, "Get me something to break these shackles off." And they did. Remember, there was no outside stairs to the balcony at that time. And he told them to stay where they were and not to come across the street. People say that they could have killed Billy at several different times, but they sort of felt sorry for him. He asked for a horse, and they brought him one saddled. They brought a pick to him to break his chain on his leg irons. When he tried to get on the horse the first time, with his leg irons and holding a rifle, he fell off. Then he actually had someone to hold his guns for him so he could get back on the horse. They say that he comes back through these doors from the balcony, and then he goes back down the same stairs where he shot Bell. There's a bullet hole in the wall at the bottom of the stairs they claim went through Bell and into the wall. When he gets out and gets on his horse, he promises to send the horse back to whoever he belongs to. Billy then rides off towards the west. Everyone says that he was in no hurry. Also, a couple of days later, the horse comes back with a rope tied around its neck. So they didn't know if Billy sent the horse back, if he got loose and came back on his own, or if Billy fell off and it came back. This is the way Billy rode out of town. It was discovered later that he went to the home of a Mexican friend that helped him take off his shackles. 2.5 months after Billy's jailbreak, on the 14th of July, 1881, Sheriff Pat Garrett received word that Billy had been spotted in and around Fort Sumner. At first, Garrett didn't believe it. Surely Billy had headed for Texas or Mexico, but he kept getting these reports. So he gathered up some deputies and headed up that way. Now this is where old Fort Sumner was located. All the old forts, shops, houses are all gone, including the Maxwell house where Billy was killed. But they do have markers where everything was located. And this is a picture of Pete Maxwell standing in the center. Pete's dad, Lucian Maxwell, had passed away and turned over all of his holdings to his son Pete. Pete was acquainted with Billy. Some folks say that he actually liked Billy. However, they also say he knew and liked Pat Garrett. This is another picture of Pete sitting down. It has also been said that Pete did not like the idea of his younger sister Pauletta being involved with someone that was wanted by the law like Billy. Several people knew of Billy and Pauletta's involvement. Now this is a picture of Pauletta. She always denied any involvement with Billy the Kid. And only a few months after Billy's death, Pauletta married a wealthy man. But she was wealthy also. They had a son and 2 daughters. It is said that marriage did not last because her husband ran off with another woman. Now, Pauletta stayed in and around Fort Sumner the rest of her life and is buried in the same cemetery as Billy is. This, of course, is Pauletta later on. This is Delvana Maxwell. Delvana was a full-blooded Indian. The Maxwells had adopted Delvana, and she served as their daughter and also as their housekeeper. She was close friends with Billy the Kid. She always hated Pat Garrett. When Pat died, she said that she was glad that the killer of her little boy, that she always called Billy, was dead. Now this is the Maxwell home at Fort Sumner. The corner room with the window to the left of the man with the horse is where Pete Maxwell's bedroom was located. And on July the 14th, 1881, Pete was in his bedroom around midnight with Pat Garrett. Garrett had come to ask Pete if he knew where Billy the Kid was. And it's possible that Pete was the one that sent for Garrett. Garrett had left 2 deputies outside the fence waiting for him. It was reported that Billy was sneaking from a friend's house, possibly a girlfriend, to the Maxwell house to get a slice of meat or bacon that Pete Maxwell always had hanging up in his kitchen. Others say that that was just a tale from the Maxwells to protect Pauletta's reputation, and he was actually on his way to Pauletta's room. When Billy spotted the 2 deputies, he backed into Pete's room. It was a warm night and Pete was sleeping with his door open. Pete's room was dark, and Billy asked Pete, "Kes, or who is it? Who's those 2 men outside?" Garrett recognized Billy's voice and began shooting. Billy fell dead without even seeing his shooter. It's been said that Delvana and Pauletta helped to identify his body. At the white plaque on the ground is where Pete Maxwell's bedroom was located. Billy's real name was Henry McCarty, and he sometimes went by the name William Henry Bunny. This is the Pecos River that flowed right behind the Maxwell house. After Billy's death, they took his body over to the carpenter's shop and laid him out on this bench to prepare his body for burial. Years later, Governor Richardson tried to have DNA testing, but they were unable to extract enough blood from the bench. Billy was taken only a few hundred yards to the old military cemetery. This little tombstone has been stolen several times, so now they have it in a small cage. He was buried next to his 2 pals, Charlie Bowdry and Tom O'Fourier. There is a cage built around their graves to protect it. They had to wait until Billy was dead to put bars around him that could hold him.